पहले मैम की ओटी कर देते हैं मेरे इसके बाद
हेलो हेलो हेलो
Good afternoon. Is it audible? Good afternoon, respected ED sir, respected director ma'am, Dr. Santosh, Dr. Shaheen. When lives are on the line, when a disaster strikes, and when children are striving, the humanitarians are there. When nobody is there, the humanitarians are there. And today we are gathered here to celebrate the humanitarian workers for providing aid, food, shelter, and protection in some of the world's most dangerous places. Mind it, most dangerous places. On behalf of IIHMR Delhi, I welcome the Honorable Executive Director of NIDM, Shri Rajendra Ratnu, and thank him for kindly agreeing to chair the workshop. We also have with us Dr. Professor Santosh Kumar Sir, Senior Advisor at NIDM, as the subject matter expert, and Dr. Shaheen Ansari, Education Specialist at Child Rights and Youth, as subject matter expert for the workshop. To bring home the global experience, we have speakers from Iran and United Kingdom. From Iran, we have Dr. Abbas Ustad with us. He is Associate Professor and Head Department of Disaster Public Health, School of Public Health, Tehran. And from UK, we have Ms. Ipshita Shi. She is a Master's in Nursing from Delhi University and currently working as Registered Nurse in Stoke Mandeville Hospitals, UK. Now, I would like to request and invite Dr. Sutapa, Director at IIHMR Delhi, to present a sapling as a mark of respect to the session chair, Shri Rajendra Ratnu ji. Now, may I request Dr. Sumesh Kumar, Associate Dean, Academics and Student Affairs, IIHMR Delhi, to please present the sapling as a mark of respect to Dr. Santosh Kumar. Now, may I request Dr. Puneet, Professor IIHMR, to kindly present the sapling to Dr. Shaheen Ansari as a mark of respect. With the permission of the chair, now I would like to request and invite Dr. Sutapa, our director, for her welcome address for the event. Dr. Sutapa is currently serving as a director at the IIHMR Delhi Institute. She is highly esteemed public health specialist. With her expertise, leadership, and dedication, she has made significant contribution to the field of public health. Dr. Neogi's visionary approach and commitment to nurturing future healthcare leaders has established the institute, has established her as a prominent figure in the field of public health and healthcare industry. With her extensive experience and expertise, she is actively engaged in research and academics. Dr. Neogi holds MBBS degree from NRS Medical College, Kolkata, and her MD from PGIMER in Chandigarh and DNB in Maternal and Child Health. Her vision is to mentor students and young professionals who can become catalysts for change in the future. She seeks to foster collaboration between different disciplines such as engineering and medicine or social science and medicines by creating synergy between research programs and academics. Over to you, ma'am. Very good afternoon to all of you. Respected Shri Rajendra Ratnu ji, Executive Director, NIDM, Dr. Santosh Kumar, Senior Advisor, NIDM, Dr. Abbas Ustad from Tehran University, Dr. Shaheen Ansari from CRAI, Ms. Ipshita Shi from UK, our faculty and staff colleagues, and also dear students. So I'll take this opportunity to welcome you all on behalf of IIHMR Delhi. And because some of you are visiting here for the first time, I thought I'll take this opportunity to brief you about our institution. So, a brief about the institute.
We have more than 38 years of legacy of being India's first AICT or India's first institution that actually formally offered a course, AICT approved course on PGDM on health and hospital management. The first ever institutions was initiated from Jaipur, and seeing the demand of such professionals, there was a felt need to expand the workforce, and hence we came up with our subsequent campuses in Bangalore and in Delhi. The Delhi campus is called the International Institute of Health Management Research because largely our focus is national as well as international. We are guided by the core values, which includes quality, accountability, transparency, trust, and sharing knowledge and information. We are primarily a research and a postgraduate institute, and our focus is to strengthen research, health management, education, and training in the health sector. Our campus was inaugurated on August 18, 2008, and since then we have grown many folds. Between 2008 and 2023 rather, we have launched three academic programs in different years, and we have our equivalent status to MBA as a mandate. And this year also we have received the NAC A accreditation, which is another feather in our cap. So the institution is guided by an able team of professional students and alumni. So currently we have more than 1,200 strong alumni network, 700 plus students, 21 faculty members from diverse background, and 36 non-teaching staff. These are the brochures of our academic courses which are run as part of IIHMR Delhi. We have been given a community outreach area by the Delhi government to initiate some of the community-based activities, which is going to form the skills, academic and research skills of both the faculty members and our students. And these are some of the activities that we do as part of our academic curriculum. IIHMR Delhi is one of the hubs for research and practice, and we have collaborations with different government institutions. We are also empaneled with certain government institutions to undertake implementation research projects as and when mandated by the government. We have an institutional review board which is registered with the Department of Health Research, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So all our research work, etc., are actually follow the ethical principles as laid down by the government. We have national collaborations with different organizations across different sectors, which include healthcare IT sector, hospital sector, and also the health sector, and medical colleges also. So all these have facilitated our students' placement, internship, joint research projects, proposal, trainings, etc. Our global footprints have also increased in the last 15 years. We have formal collaborations with Imperial College London, UK, with University of Edinburgh, Scotland, with Mahidol University, Bangkok, with Jaffna University, Sri Lanka, with Timor-Leste, and we also have our activities going on in Bangladesh, in Nepal. We have collaborations with some of the UAE hospitals, which includes Emirates, Arabian Healthcare, and Thumbay Hospital Group. We have collaboration with University of Pretoria, which is in South Africa, with Tehran Institute of Medical College, Tehran, Johns Hopkins School of Public Health in USA. Our training is also one of the important portfolios that has seen a significant increase in the number of trainings conducted, number of participants attending these training programs, and the reach of the participants from different parts of the world. We also are involved in international trainings wherein we have gone to other countries to conduct trainings for our own people or for their people. So these are some of the examples to show that we have conducted international LTPs in Bangkok and in Timor-Leste. We also encourage our students to attend webinars, seminars, and workshops outside IIHMR Delhi, and this is just a snapshot of some of the examples to show how we encourage students to go out and participate in day-to-day affairs and meetings and events. We also have established an institutions innovation council as per the mandate of Ministry of Education, and currently we are conducting several activities as part of this innovation cell. Recently, we have launched a certificate course in diabetes education in collaboration with the health tech organization. And the first batch itself has seen an enrollment of 102 students. IIHMR Delhi is considered as an associator by the NHA, which is National Health Authority, Government of India. Our students are trained as volunteers and they carry forward the messages of the Ayushman Bharat and AHA. So this is how we are also supporting the government in their endeavors to expand their programs. IIHMR Delhi is recognized by NIDM as an academic partner, and we are registered with the IUINDRR NIDM. Recently, as I said, that we have been accredited the A status by A grade by NAC, and so great minds meet here, and we look forward to a very enriching discussion in the workshop today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Shukla. Moving on to the key elements of the workshop, I would like to introduce you to the subject before I invite the respective chair for giving the keynote address and chairing the session. World Humanitarian Day, that is the 19th of August. It is observed every year on 19th of August. This was established in 2008 by the United Nations General Assembly and was officially celebrated since 2009. This day was specifically 19th August was chosen as it marks the anniversary of bombing of the Canal Hotel in Baghdad, Iran, where more than 20 workers and one of the United Nations High Commissioner, Sergio Di Mello, was killed in the bombing itself. They went there on a humanitarian mission and they were killed in that bombing. Each year, a different theme is chosen to commemorate the day. The last year's theme was It Takes a Village to Raise a Child. This year's theme is No Matter What. World Humanitarian Day has to be submitted. This year's theme is really very strong. And the organizations worldwide get involved to honor this day in a range of ways. Each year, this day focuses on bringing together partners from across the humanitarian system to advocate for the survival, well-being, and dignity of people affected by crisis on both the sides, the workers as well as the recipient of the care, and for the safety and security of the aid workers specifically. The theme of this year is the human race with the slogan, It Takes a Village. Again, it takes a village. Just like as it takes a village to raise a child, it takes the whole community to help people in need. In an emergency, the first people to respond are always crisis-affected people themselves. The one who are less severely injured are the one who come forward for the rescue, help, and all sorts of humanitarian aid is provided primarily by the first responders who arise from the community itself. This year's event will be focused on bringing people together from all walks of life, and no matter what is the theme, as I already told. Emergencies generally cause immense amount of suffering to millions of people, and usually the world's poorest, vulnerable, most marginalized are most affected. Humanitarian aid workers, including healthcare workers, strive to provide humanitarian aid, assistance, life-saving assistance, long-term rehabilitation, and disaster to the disaster-affected community, regardless of where they are located in the world, and without any discrimination. That is the key. Irrespective of their nationality, social group, ethnicity, religion, gender, race, or any other factor you name. So the problem that are often encountered by persons affected by the consequences of any sort of natural disasters include unequal assistance, discrimination in aid provisions. So at one side, we talk about equality, equal distribution of aids, equal distribution of life-saving, emergency care, etc. On the other hand, these kind of disparities are very well appreciated in the disaster events or any sort of humanitarian crisis that we come across or that we read about. It is not limited to just unequal access to assistance. It involves discrimination in aid provisions, enforced relocation, sexual and gender-based violence, loss of documentation, recruitment of children into fighting forces, unsafe or involuntary return to resettlements, and issue of property restitution. Property restitution is a very big issue that is to be dealt with in case of humanitarian crisis originating from natural disasters or human conflicts. It is therefore suggested to have a human rights approach to planning, both the initial emergency and long-term responses. People should not lose their basic rights as humans as a result of natural disasters or their displacements. Rather, all those affected by natural disasters, including those who are displaced, are entitled to protection of all from all sorts of abuse and should be liable for relevant human right protection. It is also to be noted that human right encompasses not only civil rights and political rights, but also economic, social, and cultural rights. Is the presentation there? I really want to switch on to the presentation because the last slide which I'm going to read has got some scary and extremely distasteful statistics mentioned into it. So I really want to have everybody's eyes onto it. It says approximately 122 million more people are facing hunger in the world since 2019. And this statistics is of 2022. 2023 statistics is awaited. So 122 million more people are facing. Okay. This slide. So 122 million more people are facing hunger in the world since 2019 due to pandemic and repeated weather shocks, conflicts, including the Ukraine war. 339 million people will need humanitarian assistance in 2023. That is the speculation, which is approximately 65 million more than in 2022. It is approximately 25% increase, which is equal to approximately 1 in every 23rd person needing humanitarian assistance. It is estimated that between 691 and 783 million people in the world faced hunger in 2022. This number is huge. It is also projected that almost 600 million people will be chronically undernourished in 2030. By the time we reach 2030, we'll have approximately 600 million people who will be chronically malnourished. And this is about 119 million more than expected. Reason being pandemic, Ukraine war, ongoing recession, weather, extreme weather events, all these things have a compounding effect on this. Worldwide in 2022, an estimated 148.1 million children under the age of 5 suffered from chronic malnutrition. It is approximately 22%, 22.3% of the total population, children population. 45 million, which is approximately 6.8%, suffered from acute malnutrition. This statistics is really scary and distasteful. After 20 years, forced displacement shows no sign of slowing. So when 2022 data was compared to 2002 data, it was found that the gap of 20 years has happened, but there is no slowing down in the displacement, in the rate of displacement of population. Over 103 million people are displaced as on date while we are standing here, and even more. About 2/3 of the refugees and asylum seekers originate from countries where there are acute food crises, disasters, and extreme weather events. So extreme weather event, climate related issues are the key to all these issues, which include flooding, drought, and are responsible for the majority of forced displacement. People are displaced because of these kind of factors. Violent conflicts continues to take a heavy toll on civilians, especially when explosives are used in populated areas. So Ukraine war is a big example for that. Sudan crisis, which we just heard a few months back, is another example. Natural disasters or natural hazards, if we say, Turkey Syria earthquake was another major hit that the world took in this year. Children remain especially vulnerable, and the number of attacks on schools and hospitals has increased. The data shows that it has increased over a period of time. Violence against aid workers is also increasing, and 98% of those killed were working in their own countries. The aid workers are actually are extreme targets for these extremist forces, and they are on the hit list. The effect of COVID pandemic, climate change, and the ongoing indirect socio-economic impacts of COVID-19 are interacting and creating havoc in the lives of individuals and communities, while also creating new and worsening the existing hunger hotspots, reversing gains that families have made over a period of time to escape poverty, and is escalating the need for humanitarian assistance more than ever before. And humanitarian workers are also needed in a large number. Humanitarian aid is also needed in large number than ever before. That is the take-home message. With this, I invite Shri Rajendra Ratnuji for giving the keynote address and begin the plenary session for today's workshop, Unfolding Challenges of Humanitarian Crisis During Disasters. I wish to introduce Sir for this purpose. Sir is an IS officer of 2001 batch of Tamil Nadu cadre. He is presently serving as Executive Director at the National Institute for Disaster Management, Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India. In a short span of time after his joining at NIDM, he has made significant contribution as Executive Director. Under his guidance, NIDM took lead in organizing the pre-event as well as the main event of NPDRR in the month of March. Further, under his guidance, NIDM has participated in G20 DRR working group meetings and has effectively steered NIDM for furthering cooperation in humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, climate change adaptation, and related issues. He was also keynote speaker for the G20 online event by Asia and Pacific Center for Transfer of Technology, APCTT, under UNSCAP. He also facilitated mainstreaming DRR trainings in public health emergency and disaster management professionals development program with NCDC, National Center for Disease Control, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution, Ministry of Labor, as well as 7 other departments where work is in progress. He is instrumental in integrating DRR into higher education, graduates and postgraduate education. Before joining NIDM, he was working as Joint Secretary, Department of Promotion and Industry and Internal Trade, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India, where he was looking after international cooperation, and he has successfully accomplished and led many high budget or basically huge budget projects amounting to approximately 500 crore. He was instrumental in game-changing policy under PM Gati Shakti mission. He has served the state of Tamil Nadu in various capacities in different sectors, including tsunami rehabilitation, rural development, fisheries, shipping, urban governance, technical and higher education, disaster management, and etc. He was also district collector of Kudalur and Kanyakumari district. Shri Ratnu brings with him a wealth of experience in managing a variety of disaster situations, including tsunami, floods, cyclone, oil spills, risk mitigation for chemical disasters, fire emergencies, as well as health emergencies, including swine flu, dengue, COVID-19, etc. He has worked with directors, fisheries, managing director, worked as director fisheries, managing director, Tamil Nadu, Medical Science Corporation Commissioners, and College of Higher Education and Technical Education. He is a graduate in economics, psychology, and philosophy with postgraduate degree in psychology. He is a gold medalist from JNU, and he has completed his MPhil in community health from JNU. He is awarded with Prime Minister National Award for effective implementation of NREGA works, and he is recognized as the best collector for effective public grievance redressal in his district by the Chief Minister Award twice. The list will go on and we'll need another 2 hours for extending the session. So I'll just stop my introduction here and request sir to kindly raise the dais and say the keynote for the workshop. Over to you, sir. What do you need? Sorry, sir. Introduction.
Dr. Sutapa Vinogi, Director of this IIHMR Delhi, Professor Santosh Kumar, my guru as well as my colleague in the other, all the esteemed dignitaries, faculty members, dear students. It gives me enormous honor in coming to address this August gathering for multiple reasons. First being that this is a very, very important area you have taken, and you are commemorating the World Humanitarian Day, which is very much relevant to National Institute of Disaster Management also, as natural disaster form a very important integral part of this very important area. Second thing is that coming to an academic institution is also always honor and a privilege, as I started my career as a university teacher, and this gives me an opportunity to revive my teacher in me back and to connect with their students. And third thing, myself as a student of community health gives me added privilege to be interacting with you. So thanks for this opportunity to International Institute of Health Management and Research. I think the introduction portrayed about me is not that accurate as it appears. I'm a very simple, humble person. I think Nidhi has put this thing, but definitely the picture she has portrayed of the humanitarian crisis is certainly something that I do not disagree with. And she has very intelligently and very affirmatively backed her statements and narrations with solid facts and figures. And it gives us really an opportunity to reflect at this moment when we are seeing that hunger spots in the world are increasing. We are seeing that the humanitarian crises are increasing, and there are projections about 2030, how this distress in the communities is going to increase more and more. And that, coupled with the climate change and increasing intensity and frequency of disaster, is also an area where we need to reflect that this humanitarian crisis, while increasing, we also have to continue to reflect upon these kind of areas to see that how our preparedness, mitigation, and response can be more better coordinated, and what are the lessons that we have learned from the past. As you've seen from the data, that whether they are man-made disasters or natural disasters or the war situations, violence, and other forms of humanitarian crisis, millions and millions of people are at risk today, and this makes it very important that how we manage these humanitarian crises. It is also a very very complex, we can say. These are humanitarian crises are very interconnected factors and very complex factors which lead to these kind of crises, and therefore each crisis comes up with a very unique set of factors which are leading to these crises, and therefore its manifestation or unfolding also becomes very unique to that particular context. And therefore, while we can generalize and make certain generalized statements about our strategy for addressing, nevertheless, we'll always have to keep our eyes open to understand those unique circumstances in which each humanitarian crisis is cropping up and impacting certain category of people in a certain unique way, so that our response also is unique to that particular situation. I will also, in between, connecting with you with my experiences of various disaster and these responses, and particularly I will be deriving from tsunami experiences, because that was a kind of a crisis which was of that magnitude, where a lot of international agencies and humanitarian aid had to be collected and coordinated. At that time, actually, we did not have any modern technological devices such as internet or other tools so proliferated up to community and the disaster managers that we could leverage them, and that had led to many pitfalls. Despite claiming that I tried my best to do very well management and I got kudos from so many quarters, when I reflect back, I feel that there were many gaps which could have been addressed. For example, the place where I was working was in a Kadalur district in a school called Parangipetai, where loads of the old clothes, got dumped, because people from outside, they have certain assumption about a crisis with all good intention they bring, but finally the fishermen community which they were addressing has a very unique characteristics. They will remain without cloth, but they will not like to use very undignified, ungracefully cloths given to them. Maybe if you iron them and give in a proper way, they might have this thing. So they were just lying there. They lost their houses, but they said, we are not beggars, we will not this thing, we will not accept. I mean, I'm just trying to give that. Had we had a sort of a cloud sourcing of what is needed, though there used to be a system, I'll come to that point. So today's time we have, we can leverage internet and modern other tools to see that the humanitarian aid can be much more systematic, much more need-based, much more coordinated, and demand-driven rather than a supply-oriented. So this also gives us an opportunity to have a better coordination and better improved coordination, because managing information that can be easily shared, and for example, working for certain systems that for certain data tools and formats, which is otherwise, so many of the agencies can share those data formats and tools, as well as they can share the information about the resources that we are having, and thereby there can be better coordination not only between the community needs and the international aid agencies, but also among different agencies. There can be better coordination is possible today's time. And otherwise we found that time there was a lot of confusion. What is the role of different organizations? And there was a lot of time was taken to assess the community needs that time. Another very important area is community involvement in any of the humanitarian crisis. Many times as the humanitarian managers, we do armchair theorizing, assuming that community needs this or that, which may be by and large correct, but it may not be totally driven as per the needs of the community. I'll again take back you to my experiences during tsunami and many other disasters, and where, for example, during tsunami, I was on a very, my first posting as IAS officer. So it was a limited area. My subdivision, I just divided into 2 geographic entities, and I was handling around 10 to 15 habitation on the coastal habitations. So I had a system that every day evening there will be, 1 male and 1 female leader from each of the habitation will come, and they'll be meeting around 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, and we'll take feedback that what was done today, what were the gaps, this thing, and how we can, mobilize those community needs. So community needs are very dynamic during a humanitarian crisis, especially in the beginning. Initially, there may be, the biggest challenge may be to save lives, the injured who are there, the dead, disposal of the bodies. As you move on, then there will be, many other things related to temporary shelters, related to food, water, and basic amenities, crop up. So all these things are very dynamically evolving, and there are many dimensions to it. There is a gender dimension to it. There is a nutritional dimension to it. There is a health dimension to it, and you have to constantly de-jargonize these things and to understand in a simple, understandable language from the community as to what is needed. For example, I think it was close interaction with the community, and also we had certain volunteers of in Tamil Nadu, the self-help movement, and we have a special vertical for dealing with the social welfare department. So we also had asked them to have meeting with the women self-help groups in the villages and habitations that time, and by that we could derive certain insights that okay, women need sanitary napkins, and we asked the Tirupur textile to just provide loads of that. And that was, came up as a, unique example again in that area in terms of the response, that it was very gendered and it was appreciated by many of the, activists and other NGOs. And these are not a rocket science. It is just you have to interact with the people and know that what they are needing, and you have to involve them into a better participation so that there can be response can be driven to community needs. As I already emphasized about the information sharing in humanitarian emergencies, and again here, there are many other platforms like crowdsource mapping, sharing of the data from the organizations, and creation of web-based community mapping, etc., that can help into a better and effective interface between mobilization of resources as well as their fair and equitable distribution. Similarly, the humanitarian aid and this thing is not the communities. As you move on, they are not contented only with that passive recipient of your relief material and just looking that like beggars that okay, you have given us water, shelter, and okay. They are also looking for some medium term and long term goals of restoring peace, of normalcy, long term their livelihood restoration, etc. So while humanitarian aid has to be there, but it has to be integral part of a larger strategy as to how you respond to in the medium term and long term, and how your humanitarian aid does not make the communities totally dependent and this thing, but it empowers them to also become active participants in their recovery and rehabilitation in long term. Similarly, each of the organization brings with them different strengths. The local communities, local organization have their own, strengths. The international organization have their own strengths, and each one of them have to recognize that and to work in a better, pooling of insights and pooling of the not only resources but also insights and strengths. So that is an important, learning point, and by that one can create a mechanism of better collaboration between the local organizations and international agencies. Rather than competing with each other, they can better collaborate, they can better cooperate with each other. So to put in a sense, I think we require a model of humanitarian aid which is more dynamic, which is more interactive, which is more inclusive, which is more participatory, and which can also be backed and driven by the modern technological devices which enable an aid into, and also it's a integral part of long-term recovery process, and not a standalone relief charity oriented model, but looks at citizens and them as important partners who are also responsible for their own progress, and who are active participants into this entire process of recovery, rather than we becoming totally champions for their cause and making or creating more dependency in this thing. And we have seen that disaster after disaster, these are some of the challenges which continue to happen. We may sometimes do not understand the unique needs of the communities. There are many dilemmas also that come up. For example, in the fishermen community, the next community is a Dalit habitation, which actually traditionally were fishermen workers. Now, when they're coming to distribute many NGOs are coming to distribute the boats and other things. One of the dilemmas is that, do you also give, if you give the boats to erstwhile owners, you are creating more competition in the limited marine resources, your intensity of fishing is increasing. If you do not give it, there is a question of equity, and there may be Dalit right activists who can rightly articulate a position that you're giving to the more to haves, but the have-nots, you want them to be continue to be a worker or laborers. So I'm not putting any answer to it. I'm just raising these dilemmas for the young students to reflect upon. Maybe they can keep their phones for some time away and engage in reflection. And I know this is very challenging, and I think it's also maybe a human right violation to have a session, very intense session after lunch, when the attention deficit disorder sets in temporarily every day, and then asking young students to have very heavy talk, I know is very difficult to digest. So I will not linger on. It's very long. I'll try to summarize it at this juncture, and maybe I'll get more opportunity to be having more interactive session with you. So I think we have to see that not only how we manage humanitarian crisis, but I think like in health, you are students of health management, and health is not only about curative health, but it is also the preventive health, the promotive health. Same way, I think the humanitarian crisis also we should look as like a patient in a emergency ward. So I think one good way at a societal level is to how you can reduce the emergencies and accidents so that your ward is lighter. So similarly, we also have to, while continue to manage better the humanitarian crisis, but all the time we have to also think upon how to reduce these crises, how to prevent these humanitarian crises, and how to build in a culture. Certain crises may not be possible to reduce them. They may be inevitable. The hazards, natural hazards may be inevitable, but definitely natural hazards may be prevented from turning into disasters, because every hazard does not lead to deaths and destruction. When the hazard is not managed well, this leads to a crisis. Similarly, people say that earthquakes do not kill people. Do you agree? I do agree that earthquakes do not kill people. It is the buildings that do. So if your buildings are resilient, people may not die. So similarly, if there are no exposure and there is a total wild area, there is no death in earthquake also. So I think we have to see that our infrastructure is resilient so that hazard does not turn into a crisis. When the tsunami first time came, it killed so many people. But I'm sure today's time, if the tsunami comes, maybe one or two people who are in the coast and where the message or could not be conveyed, because today our early warning system, sharing of information has so much. So we have to learn from each crisis and each disaster, and to learn that how we can prevent that crisis to be turning into a major humanitarian crisis. The conflicts will be there. There'll be difference of geopolitical opinions will be there. Definitely, it is bound to happen. The natural hazards will be there. But I think all of us can work together to see a better world for us, and particularly for your future generations, to see that we do not see them as turning into major humanitarian crisis. We can try to identify those risks. We can try to prevent those risks. If not preventing, we can minimize those risks, reduce those risks, or at least we can mitigate those risks by appropriate coordinated interventions. With these words, I once again thank the organizers, and particularly Nidhi ji, for giving me this opportunity, and thank you very much for this occasion. Looking forward to a very, very successful event, and the other two international resource persons who are also connected. I'm looking forward to hear them, as well as Professor Santosh Kumar. So just want to share that my first introduction to disaster management when I was in Rajasthan Administrative Service was he was a faculty in HCM Ripa Jaipur, where I was trained, and that time he had given me assignment. That was my first curiosity toward disaster management. So though he is now advisor to me, but he was former director also of the institute, and so I'm very indebted to him, and today's presence also adds value to these discussions. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, sir. And I'm sure the students who are checking their phone must be looking at 4:30 so that they can interact closely with you in person. They can ask questions without the faculty around. So probably they are doing that. Thank you. Want to follow? Okay, thank you, sir. And I completely agree with what you said about Santosh, sir. He is my mentor too. And I have learned a lot of disaster management, risk mitigation, and in the beginning of my career, I used to do take a lot of things, whatever he said, as a guideline for me, or used to be a guideline for me. That is how it is for me. So thanks a lot, sir, for being here. Thanks a lot, sir, ED sir, for giving us this insight. And now I'd like to request Professor Santosh Kumar to kindly provide his insights and valuable inputs on the first session, saving life and limb ethically, the basic premise for humanitarian crisis management. Sir is an expert with 30 years of experience. Sir, please, jo bachche sunna chahiye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sutapa Niyogiji, the director of the institution, and Executive Director Sri Rajendra Ratnuji, who is the chief guest of this occasion. We have Dr. Sahin also with us. He is working with the CRI and also one of the partners. And Dr. Nidhi, you have brought us here to interact with the young mind. There's already ignited mind for the humanitarian crisis. And it's our opportunity to interact with the youngsters to get the things like also to comprehend our own thoughts, that what are the challenges for the future which you see is important for us while making a plan and so on and so forth. When we talk about humanitarian crisis and the very gloomy picture which came up, that the kind of challenges which is unfolding, and this we see that suffering is going to be much harder than what we have today. And whole of the work which we are working and committed to is for actually eradicating that suffering. And humanitarian crisis and the humanitarian workers. The job is this crisis is there and we are the workers. The workers' job is to do what? The workers' job is to remove the kind of a stress, distress, unhappiness to happiness. That's what the challenge which we have. And many people, or almost all the people, have to go through the same kind of a process. No one is free from the crisis. Everyone in the individual level or the community level or the national level or the international level, we have different one or the other kinds of crisis in our life. At times we cope with, and at times we need help from others to actually. This type of crisis always happens. So I wanted to understand when we started our career that humanitarian, that was a very prominent word, humanitarian crisis, when we started, say, 30 years ago. And hardly anything, what Mr. Ratnu has raised is very valuable questions. It's not only the reactive, but also become proactive. Youngsters and we all together have to think what the key messages which he is trying to give. Humanitarian crisis emerges after the crisis. But how that impact can be reduced and can be made minimum, but that is possible only when we start working ex ante, pre-disaster or pre-scenario. What is our preparedness as a humanitarian worker? What are the things which are unfolding as a challenge? And those challenges to be taken up as in a different way. One, you must have heard about the Buddha's story. One very much grieved lady, she lost her kid and she was looking for an answer. And she was into grief and crying, howling and everything. And no one can actually, that time was able to help her to come out from that grief. So all humanitarian crisis, the worker or the community during that time, the worker concept was not there, but it's always the community feeling was there. So everyone trying to. So people said that probably you will get the answer from Buddha. So there is a saint, you go to him and probably ask this question, probably he would help you in taking you out of the suffering. So the lady went to him and asked this question that I have this child, and so I lost him because of some problem happened and because of his illness. So you have to actually take care of me and you have to bring him back. Buddha very quietly did not lose his patience and very quietly listened to the lady, gave full time, full ears to her and said, okay, we will do that. Certainly, I will take care of your problem. But one kind of एक शर्त है और उस शर्त में ये है कि you go and collect a bowl of rice और उस घर से लाना जहां किसी की डेथ नहीं. So the lady went and went and went and went and went. After that, when she came back in the evening to Buddha, said, oh, good that you have come. कहाँ है चावल हो ले bowl दो. The lady said that I went to every house, every single house in the vicinity, and I did not find any house where this kind of a grief or suffering was not there. So Buddha very quietly said that, so you got the answer. you yourself solve your own problems. So everyone has to go through such kind of a process. Only thing that we have to realize, we have to cope and we have to move. As a humanitarian worker, we are also victim and also we are the service providers. So in two different roles and different times, that when how we can bring that compassion in ourselves. Humanitarian means what? That you have to be ready to go beyond yourself. And that beyond yourself meaning thereby that you have to take care of the person with the same compassion and love which you want for yourself. So that is the best part to be taken up as a humanitarian worker, is how to bring that compassion and that love as a kind of a major characteristic as a service provider. Whether you take this pre-positioning or whether you go for ex ante, whether you go for pre-disaster planning or you go for the post-disaster planning. When we were going to in many flood situations, Ratnuji is a very much and very dedicated practitioners when it comes to disaster. And you must have seen his passion. He started his career and then district magistrate, he faced the tsunami. And he said he's a practitioner. So whatever the solutions which we would be trying to give with our own research, like institution like IIHMR, so that kind of a thing will go as a kind of execution. So what kind of solutions which we are trying to look at, either from the research, whether we are from the kind of our own wisdom, from our much of our reading. So those practitioners will also take and institutionalize as a kind of a public policy. So there we see that what are the operational challenges and what are the public policy challenges as humanitarian workers. So these two things are also to be thought that yes, that we have a problem, we would be having problem. And like earlier, we used to have one disaster in 10 years of time. We are having 10 disasters in 1 year of time. So there's total paradigm shift in the kind of events which we are having. And this is getting also multiplied with the conflict situation, as you already mentioned. It's also getting complex with the kind of different vulnerabilities. And that different vulnerabilities, whether in terms of, you talk about poverty, and it's not below poverty line is saying that and everything is the same. No. Many of the victims you will find that people are right on the poverty line, and you find much below than the poverty line also. So depth of poverty is also to be seen. All below poverty line people are not the same kind of challenges that as a victim than the that we see. So importantly, that social system is also to be recognized in what kind of a social system, what are the cultural reality in which we are living as a social worker. So when we moved to, I was undergoing in Israel for the disaster risk management training and went to the hospital and wanted to see that what are the practices they are doing for actually providing, as you have said, the dilemma of ethics of amputation, and also you said about that saving lives. So there in the hospital, what I could see that if they were doing of the, say, the scenario of earthquake, and they found that 200 patients are coming as an affected person, reporting to the kind of a hospital. So what could be the, as a humanitarian crisis you say, or the emergency support system you say, or the psychosocial care you should say, or whether you should talk about the physical health intervention you can say, all gets actually together at same point of time. Everything is to be given at the same point of time to the person, the requirements which he emerges out. So how to do this kind of this complex reality as a humanitarian worker? And so many of them, if you don't attend them, they may die, or they go for amputation, or some certain kind of things happen. So what is the readiness of the worker, and what are the readiness of the institution, and what are the readiness of the whole system for addressing such issues? So how to get this IIHMR courses for the different hospitals, if you like the kind of emergencies which are, we had gone to this Himachal Pradesh last week to do the damage and loss assessment, what is happening. Right there, when we are there and people are dying and slip off the whole of the mud, or the pahad gir jata hai, jisko kehte hain local language. And then 10 people are buried there. So how to get them out, how to do the counseling, or how to go for amputation, or how to go for this saving lives. In such kind of a scenario you would be in the future. and also at present. So how we prioritize. So what Israel did for this such kind of a situation, many countries now practicing this, including India. So when 200 people are there and you see that how many staff in trauma center you have and how you are going to address the last patient, that is the most important. So first one will get the say 20 seconds kind of a, and 20 seconds you are approaching and then, but 200 will take the 20 into 200. So 400 or 4,000 kind of a minutes that you will reach to the last patient. So how to provide that kind of a crisis situation as a kind of a dealing with the life and also dealing with the different challenges of amputation or maybe psychosocial disorder. So those kinds of things would emerge. So that in our courses also we need to look into that what kind of a situation we are into. So those who are living in the crisis situation, those who are the victims, see the plight of the victims, and victims are not a homogeneous category. Victims are very, very heterogeneous. Some will have a very good physical strength, those who will have some very good mental strength, but some, as you said, that malnourished, the children, girl child, the male child, their vulnerabilities are different. So it's not, we cannot say that one size fit to all would work for everyone. So we need to very, very kind of it's a time of specialization. It's a time of science and technology. It's a time for, we say that we are moving into 5G to 6G and AI and other things, how that could be applied for the humanitarian system. This is also very, very important. Scanning a patient, how fast we can go ahead with this. So those kind of things to be brought in our understanding of saving lives and amputation. But always there is a crisis of that deciding to do what. And one word, very heavy word is there is ethics. So at times, what are the ethical things which comes into play that you have mentioned to address on that? What are the ethical issues which are coming in the way that you are aware and you know that better, that what are the ethical issues which comes in? Many of the places when you go, the service providers, they might ask that I need so much of X money or Y money or Z money, then only I will provide services. At the time of humanitarian crisis, this is ethical value. That how this ethical value of the nation is getting built in the sector for who is providing humanitarian assistance. We say that humanitarian assistance is the kind of, we are going beyond ourselves. We are going as a people are into crisis and we need to help them out. So that is the thing which we need to look at, that how the younger generation think that who am I? मेरा जन्म किस लिए हुआ है? Whether धनराशि कमाने के लिए, अपना मकान बनाने के लिए, बच्चों का लालन पालन करने के लिए, गाड़ी खरीदने के लिए, or something else. ये तो these are the means, not the end of the life. So when we are into, we have opted our career as a humanitarian worker or the health worker or this, how we can design and keep asking these questions. They might be very uncomfortable, but also this will give you comfort in the long run. So that kind of a questions need to be asked, that what is my objective of being here in the whole of the crisis situation? When you are sent to such kind of a places, then again you have to ask this question, what for I have come? What is my duty? What is my responsibility? And then you immediately you come out this Constitution of India, this Article 14 to 19. They have given you a right and responsibilities. So there we have to see that right to life with dignity. So where and how you are providing dignity to the victims. Mr. Ratnu has already mentioned about that used clothes were distributed as a humanitarian work. This is not maintaining the dignity. What I am saying is that Chalta Hai approach is over. Bring that digital approach that X is okay, Y is not okay. There is no partial fulfillment. X is there, Y is there. So planning for that how we can best provide those services to the people. I could be victim, my mother could be victim, my sister could be victim. So we are not doing for some others. We can also be a possible victims for any circumstances. So idea is to look into, introspect ourselves, that how we are going to address these issues when it's come to us, and how somebody would behave with us when I am into that kind of a circumstances. That what is my expectations? And if my expectations are not fulfilled, then we will always be kind of a very critique to the whole of the system. So the idea is to how the ethical values can be brought in the minds of the youngsters, and what are the expectations for the older generations. That is our responsibility. If we have not given you a kind of that comfort in the system, probably you can bring that change in that system and take the help of the elders, their experiences, and you bring your own ideology. You build your own ideology that what for you are here. Keep asking before you go to the bed, ask this question, what for I am here? And probably you will get all the answers by yourself. Nobody would say, you don't require Buddha, you don't require Nanak, you don't require anyone. You will get your own answer. So the idea is that how the older generation can help you in shaping your own thoughts. You can interact, not necessarily that you will agree with them, but you try to agree or you try to disagree to agree. So that is this important thing when it comes to the, because humanitarian crisis is not a very simple thing. It's very, very challenging, but very fulfilling as well. If you go, we always say that disaster management, somebody asked that how you have come into the disaster management. I was an economist teacher. I was teaching in the academy that where bureaucrats comes to, after completing their civil services, they come for the training. Our job was to teach economics, that contemporary, what are the challenges there. But I've fallen in this by default, but I'm liking and I have no regret in life. I chose this and very, very satisfying. I'm not saying that just for the sake of saying it. But imagine when you are bringing a smile, what Buddha brought that a smile to that lady. So it's very important as a humanitarian crisis. When we were visiting Bihar and a whole family was living on the highway, on the relief camp. As tarpaulin seats, you understand very well. Tarpaulin seats and the family of 11 people, plus 2 livestock, cattle. And they were all living 10 by 10. I had written one small piece was 10 by 10. And in Bihar, that time, the 3 months altogether, they stayed in the kind of on highways. Children were having the 1 or 2 clothes with them. And they were having an drench bhi ho rahe hain or khel bhi rahe hain. So that other kind of a challenges, skin diseases were emerging. मैं पूछा कौन कैसे सोते हो आप लोग तो दिन में they had a kind of a different kind of a timing schedule for them. सास ससुर किस समय सोते हैं, बहू किस समय सोती है, बच्चे किस समय और जानवर क्या भी रख रखा होता है. So that kind of this is all humanitarian assistance which we are giving. So idea is to relook and standardize it and see that whether 14 to 18 article which we say life and also life with dignity, is it the dignity which we are offering at the time of crisis? No. So many times the challenge of the system is also we are not that prosperous country, we are progressing, but we do not have resources to actually fulfill the dreams of the people always. But we have always faith and we are optimistic that yes, we can do that. But idea is to first, it must come to our mind. Intention is very important for the action. So that intention we have to bring in our as a kind of whenever the ethical dilemma comes in, bring that into fore that yes, this is to be given what I expect from others, that should be given to them. So that dilemma would be taken care of. So that idea is then how we can actually, I will end with this and I'll just share a small story with you. Mullah Nasruddin ka naam suna? Have you heard about this Mullah Nasruddin? Mullah Nasruddin was visiting, he was a traveler. So one village to other village to other village to other. So he was traveling and sat this under the tree and he was taking a rest. And there was a small pond and village pond. So one of the Sethji of that village came and he was just went for the wash karne ke liye jaate, to unka pair fisal gaya and he just drowned. Usme chale gaya and he was just shouting, save me, bachao, bachao, bachao kind of thing. Then villagers came listening to the Seth because the very familiar voice. So all villagers came to the pond and said, "Ki apna haath do, apna haath do, apna haath do." Sethji se keh rahe the, give your hand, give your hand. But Sethji was just bachao, bachao, bachao. Then villagers said complex issues, how to deal with this. So वो तुरंत वो जाते हैं और देखा कि मुल्ला नसरुद्दीन is sitting there and enjoying the whole process which is going on. So they went and you are laughing. The man is drowning. He is हमारे village में सबको वो देते हैं, पैसा देते हैं, साहूकार है वो. So he is a lifesaver for us. And you are कह कि नहीं तुम जाके सीधे बोलो कि मेरा हाथ लो, take my hand. Then villagers went immediately back and he was shouting again, bachao, bachao, bachao. Villager said, mera haath lo, mera haath lo. Immediately said, ji, unka haath pakad ke, phir unko rescue karke bahar aa gaya. Then again villagers went to the Mullah Nasir ki isme, what was the kind of, aisa magic kya tha do aur do mein? The magic was that his whole work is to take money, na, वो सूद का पैसा लेने का है. तो उसकी habit, उसका idea, उसकी ethics, everything is that. So जैसे बोला कि अपना लो तो उनको समझ आया कि कुछ मिल रहा है, फिर उसके बाद उसने. So this is very important. Power to give is very challenging and very important thing. Power to लेने वाले तो रहते ही हैं, and humanitarian workers is to always to give. So enjoy the power of giving, and there is no ethical dilemma would be there. And keep asking this question every time when you go to the event, what for I? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. DM is really very fulfilling, and agreeing to the disagreement is the key for life. It's the mantra for life. So we should all learn it from the very beginning, irrespective of the fact we work in which domain of public health. So coming on to the next session. The session is to be delivered by Dr. Abbas Ustad. The title of the session is Disaster and Social Justice, and he is going to present a case study from Iran. Dr. Abbas is a medical doctor, Masters of Public Health and PhD for Disasters and Emergency Health. He is Associate Professor at Tehran University of Medical Sciences and Head of Disaster and Emergency Health Department, as well as Vice Dean of School of Public Health. He has more than 20 years of experience and has conducted several educational and research projects in the field of disaster management in Iran. His main interests are community disaster resilience, refugees, health, climate change adaptation, community-based initiatives, urban health, and social determinants of health. Dr. Abbas, we are happy to have you. Are you connected?
Hello, Dr. Nidhi, how are you? Can you hear me? Dr. Nidhi, can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Abbas, we can hear you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Could you please share my slides, please? It's better, I think, because it might be we have some technical effects, okay? Okay, thank you. First of all, I would like thanks from all of the colleagues in India, especially International Institute for Disaster for Health Management Research, and my friend Dr. Nidhi, that she invited me to this very valuable and informative seminar. My lecture is about the social justice in disaster. Why does it matter and why does it mean? I would like to introduce the first part of my PhD student, Laura Hamdanieh, and I would like to thank her to conduct this very, very important and very, very informative research. Let me next slide, please. As you know, during the history, the approaches to disaster risk management have been changed. If we want to divide the approaches of disaster risk management in two main parts, we can say that the COVID-19 pandemic conducted and very big revolution in the history of the disaster risk management. Why? Because in the pre-COVID-19 era, as we see in the history, the main approach and the first approach was fatalistic approaches. And then after a while, we see that the main approach for disaster risk management changed to enduring approach. And then in the recent year and recent decades, we can see the main approach and the main issues and the main challenges is about the social approaches. But in the post-COVID-19, we see that the health is so important. It means that right now in this decade, the health is the main and is the heart of the, sustainable development and disaster risk management. Next slide, please. So I would like to mention about two main, term and phrase. We have some condition in each community that we name it social determinant of disasters. I'm sure that you know and you are informed about the social determinant of health. But right now, I would like to say about the social determinant of disasters. These items can cause an hazardous event to a big disaster or extensive or an intensive disaster. Every disaster, each disasters caused some impact, economic impact, natural impacts, social impacts that we named is social impact of disaster. Next slide, please. As you see in this slide, when we want to categorize domain of disaster risk management, we can categorize all of the domains in 6 domains. The first domain is institutional domains. As you see in Iran, we conducted this study in 2015. As you see, the main item for disaster risk management in institutional domain, it is so important that the manager, the executive, the health worker, and all of the first responders have enough competency for disaster risk management. Not, I want to emphasize in the disaster risk management circle, not just about the responding. As well as economic issues such as income, employment, insurance are so important. Cultural domain, including literacy, disaster awareness, and wide world are so important. And concerning the social domain of disaster, I would like to explain more about the social domain or social determinant of disaster in the next slide. But we know that the physical issues are so important. The location of the disaster is so important. The space and the distribution of the location in a village, in a city, in a community are so important, as well as the environment, the water resources, the green resources are so important for us to conduct an effective disaster risk management and promote our community resilience. Next slide, please. Oh, we are talking about the social determinant of disaster. I'm sure that all of you know about the power, about the social determinant of disaster, but it is so important beside of the poverty, beside of the health, beside of the social capital, social security, employment, and social well-being, there is a very, very important issue as the social justice. Based on our studies that I will explain in the next slides, social justice in disaster is a missing and is a neglected issue concerning the disaster risk management. This is next slide, please. Okay, we are talking about the social justice in disaster. The question is, what does it mean? And what are the social justice disaster characteristics? What are social justice in disaster domain and determinant? And finally, we should identify the impact of social justice of disaster. In this lecture, I would like to, explain more about the definition, about the characteristic, about the domain, and about the impacts. Next slide, please. Laura Hamdani, as I introduced her, conducted a scoping review to find out which literature, which knowledge we have and is available in all of the world. We noticed that there isn't an accurate definition for social justice in disaster. The next issue that we find based on our studies was that an explicit definition of social justice was only mentioned in 2 studies. Most definitions were not related to disaster context. When we refer to the literature, we have a lot of literature about the social equity, social justice, but we need that to define and explain about the meaning and the definition of the social justice in disaster context. And social justice and equity, based on our study, we can explain that the definition of the social justice in disaster can define as equity in words. That is so important. The words should be distributed equity in rights. That the other colleagues explain more about the equity in rights, equity in resource distribution, and consequences in all phases of disaster risk management. We should consider all of the phases of disaster risk management, not just response and preparedness and recovery. We should have an equal worth, equal rights, equal resource distribution, and equal consistency, even though in the prevention phase, in the mitigation phase, and other phases of disaster risk management. Next slide, please. As I said, this is the definition of social justice in disaster. Social justice is equity in source, rights, resource distribution, and consequences in all phases of disaster risk management in societies. Next slide, please. Concerning the determinant of social justice in disaster, as Dr. Needy explained at the beginning of this workshop, we should consider institutional domain. We should consider social, such as poverty, citizen partnership, trust, social capital, discrimination, and so on. Economic is so important, environment so important, physical, for example, infrastructures, structures, living, building codes, and etc., are so important. And as well as that is so important that we should consider cultural, issues such as education, such as awareness, and etc. Next slide, please. Based on our study, we conduct a conceptual framework for social justice in disaster. As you see, when we want to establish and conduct a conceptual framework, we should consider 3 main items. The first one is characteristics. I explained about the characteristics of social justice. You see in the middle of this slide, and the other is determinant. And the last one, or The third one is impact of social justice in disaster. When we have a social justice disaster, the main impact are human dignity. One of the colleagues explained very, very well about the human dignity and the achievement of the discrimination, good governance, and it's so important, equity, sustainability, resilience, and finally, the human rights and considering the human rights is one of the most important impact of social justice in disaster. Next slide, please. In the second phase of this thesis, we conduct a qualitative study. I just want to, mention a very little space of this study concerning the social justice of disaster definition. Based on our study, our qualitative study, social justice is equity in all domains. It means that we should consider equal economy, equal ethnic, environment, political, social, as well as resource distribution and equal opportunities. In the scoping review, we didn't see anything about the equal opportunities, but based on our qualitative study, we noticed that the equal opportunities is so important. And the next one is the different groups should be considered in the community in all phases of disaster risk management in the societies. Next slide, please. Okay, based on our study, we noticed that we need to set a unified definition for social justice in disaster. I know that it might be different definition in the different community. Why? Because the social justice in disaster, essentially social justice and equity is culture bound. The issue is culture bound term, and it is a culture bound concept. But when we want to speak to each other and communicate with each other, we need to set a unified definition of social justice in disaster risk management. The second conclusion is that we need to develop a common conceptual framework for social justice in disaster. And the last one that is so important, we need to develop national plan for achieving social justice in disaster, or we need to develop some national plans adopted or related to the justice. Why? Because the justice is the final output of sustainable development, disaster risk management, and etc. Next slide, please. Again, I would like to thank to everyone. I hope everyone be happy, and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abbas, for the wonderful presentation, presenting the study and the outcomes. We really need to define social justice, how it has to be, quantified and qualified in terms of understanding for the last person standing on the pedestal, who has to be a recipient of equal care, equal rights, and equal humanitarian aid in the event of a disaster situation. So I completely agree with you. And when it comes to vulnerable population, it becomes even more difficult to ensure equity and equality. So our next speaker, Dr. Shaheen Ansari, is an education specialist, and he is going to talk about the child specific human rights and how there is a reciprocal relationship between the children, the disasters, and human rights, how they are violated the most, or the maximum, I should say, in case of vulnerable child being the recipient of care or humanitarian aid, etc., in the event of a disaster. Dr. Shaheen, let me introduce himself to you. Dr. Shaheen has done his doctorate from Jawaharlal Nehru University and has been working in the field of development sector for more than 20 years. He has worked with national and international organizations like UNESCO, Child Fund International, and Council for Social Development. Presently, he is working as education and emergency specialist with Child Rights and Youth CRY. His focus area is child protection and child rights during disasters and emergency. His expertise is on education and social and emotional learning. He is a blogger and regularly writes on education related issues. I request Dr. Shaheen to please come over and share his experience.
You're on mute, sir. Kindly unmute. We can't hear the speaker.
Sir, please
Kindly-
unmute yourself.
Yeah. Unmute, please.
We can't hear your voice, sir.
We can't hear any.
So he's, though the detailed discussion, I've just shared the, core thing which is, related to all of us and which we should discuss on, ponder on this thing. So he says, look, I'll do that. Okay. So he said, look, everything which was created by God has to perform worship. जिसको भी भगवान ने खुदा ने बनाया है उसको पूजा करना, worship करना. He started with this. And then he said, the same way, he shared 3 examples, like what about the worship of a river? एक नदी का पूजा, इबादत, worship क्या हो सकता है? You have to, if the river we choose to give water to passerby, to animals, to human, what is the worship of a tree? एक पौधा का worship क्या हो सकता है? Suppose what if a tree stop giving the giving the oxygen, stop giving fruits, stop giving the shadow, है ना? And similarly, what will the worship of a sun? सूरज का क्या उपासना हो सकता है, बात हो सकती है? Suppose if sun stop giving you the sunlight, the heat. Similarly, human being has been created for some purpose. So I'm just repeating the Professor Santosh Kumar's okay, why we are born. So we have to think why we are born, why sun is there, why river is there, why tree is there. Similarly, God has created us. अगर हमारा कोई उपयोग नहीं है, then we are not performing our duty. आप कितना भी मस्जिद जाएं, मस्जिद जाएं, गुरुद्वारा जाएं, if you are not performing our duty means if like sun, like river, like tree, then we are not performing our why we are born. So this just start because it reminded me the story of Nizam. I thought we should start with this. So yeah, human rights, child justice. So these are the things we should know. Because during the crisis, and now these are developed, but slowly and gradually we are focusing on children. Earlier there was little focus on children and more focus on just one kind of service to everybody. So, but slowly and gradually started learning. So one of the community human right, Manav Adhikar. Can somebody explain what is the human right? कोई भी कभी आपने सोचा भी है thought what is human right? Anybody? ठीक है हाँ. There is nothing wrong. You have to just express आपके दिमाग में मानव अधिकार का मतलब क्या होता है. What do you think about human right? Then तभी हम बाल अधिकार की बात कर पाएंगे. Yes, रोटी कपड़ा and right? Yeah. Freedom to speak, बोलने का अधिकार, सांस लेने का अधिकार, है ना? और ये किसको मिलता है? इंसान को. कोई भी इंसान जिसका जन्म इस धरती पर हुआ है, चाहे किसी जात का हो, किसी धर्म का हो, किसी रेस रिलीजन का हो, she has that human right to live with dignity. जो सर ने एक्सप्लेन किया है, I don't want to, है ना? So you're right. So ये मानव अधिकार, the human rights started much earlier. It's a era. It started from BC, very historical. But throughout the process, in 1948, it was given a documented form. It was asked every country to abide by this right. That if there is a child, there is a human, she has certain bare minimum. जीने के लिए, एक इंसान को जीने के लिए जिस चीज की जरूरत है, that is his or her right, human right. And that was by UNO, but in every country it has to be followed. In India, we have National Human Rights Commission. Currently, उनका chairman है Justice Arun Kumar Mishra. He was Chief Justice of India, and now he is a chairman of NHRC, which takes care of human rights in India. And so, as we discussed, there are bare minimum which cannot be compromised. So every human has this right. As I discussed in 1948, this was declared. It's called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, right? Which was a milestone in the movement for human rights. And this I said, you say right to speak, freedom, health, everything which makes a human, give a human being dignified life. It all covers everything. From there comes Bal Adhikar, child rights. Okay, then what could be the child rights? Yeah. Education, good. Literacy, food. Vaccination, right?
So these all things should be there when we are into disaster environment. And जब हम disaster management की बात करते हैं, जब disaster होता है कहीं पे, so education, health, all those things which are should be there. So these are additional to human right. एक बच्चा भी इंसान है, so automatically she gets those all the human rights, but additionally she or he given our rights that is called child rights, in which so again the child rights, it started way back in 1924. बाल अधिकार की बात जो है 1924 शुरू हुई थी, but in 1989 it was UN decided that we should have a convention and then every country should ratify it. So every country in the world agreed to this UNCRC. Can you tell me which country did not agree? एक देश है जिसने कहा कि हम इस अधिकार को नहीं मानते, UN still that country has not signed it. Guess कीजिए, yes, you can guess. बच्चों के लिए वियतनाम और कौन? नॉर्थ कोरिया. Let me see the wild guess. और क्या हो सकता है? That's one country who has not signed yet. रशिया और पाकिस्तान, अफगानिस्तान, अब तक जो भी नाम आए नहीं है. ईरान भी नहीं है. यूनाइटेड स्टेट ऑफ अमेरिका. आप लोग गूगल कर लीजिएगा इसको. यूनाइटेड स्टेट ऑफ अमेरिका is the only country who has yet to sign the ratified. So अब और हम लोगों ने कब किया था इसको? 92 में. बना कब था ये? 89. So we are far ahead in the. See what I'm trying to say? We are far ahead in many things. We are the moment we became independent, we give women's right to vote. There are many countries, progressive, so-called progressive countries, they give right to franchise to women much later. So yeah, बच्चा क्या होता है? About who is child? When we talk about child right, when you see child, what definition comes to your mind? सुनाई नहीं दे रहा है. Yeah, less than 13 is okay. Don't worry, we are not being marked. There is no negative marking. Yes, anyone else? Okay, ठीक है. और depending on someone, anyone else can add value with this argument? किसी ने नई शिक्षा नीति पढ़ी है? पढ़ा उसका नई शिक्षा नीति, उसमें बच्चे के लिए क्या बात किया गया है? Okay, so कोई भी any human being who is 18 years or less than 18 years is a child. कोई भी इंसान जिसका उम्र 18 या उससे कम है वो क्या है? बच्चा. So when we talk about child rights, we talk of a human being in the age group of 0 to 18 years. But a child, according to government of India, बच्चे का उम्र जो है पैदा होने से पहले ही शुरू होता है. Can you tell me which, from where you are health? बच्चे का एज जो है पैदा होने से पहले शुरू होता है. बच्चे का जीवन जो है 20 weeks after pregnancy. 20 weeks के बाद you cannot abort. 20 weeks है ना. अभी जो 2001 में एक्ट आया था ना, अमेंडमेंट एक्ट, that said कि if गर्भवती जो है, गर्भ है 20 हफ्ते का है, 20 weeks, then you cannot abort. That means that the government of India recognizes child from that period. So from that period to 18 years of age. We have to, when we talk about disaster risk reduction, we have to plan that way. In that phase, it got nutrition, it got vaccination, all those things come. So there are 41 kind of rights which UNCRC says, and those all rights has been categorized by practitioner or child rights activists into 4 broad categories, right? And those 4 broad categories are survival, development, protection, and participation. Why I'm sharing this thing about, because we should know when we are into the disaster situation, we should know that this child needs these rights of education, health, survival, right? So I will introduce immediately about some rights. Then we move to the how to interact, with the children, how children and adult can work together. So when you talk about right to survival, what things come to your mind? जीने का अधिकार, एक बच्चे के जीने का अधिकार. What do you think? Think about situation in disaster. You are in some disaster. You are in, suppose a few weeks back, you are in Shimla. There was a flood, and a बच्चा है, and pregnant mother है, and what will come to? जीने का अधिकार. What do you mean? हर मुमकिन कोशिश करनी चाहिए माँ और बच्चे को बचाने. ठीक और ठीक है. चाहे वो आप सही बोल रहे हैं. Just say there is nothing wrong. We all close. We are so yeah. आपदा के और आपदा में हर वो चाहे वो स्वास्थ्य हो, चाहे वो बीमारी हो, चाहे वो किसी और हो, हर माँ को अपने बचने को और बाहर बचाने में. राइट. आप इनकी तारीफ ला सकते हैं अपने साथी के लिए. Yes, you're right. So when we think about right to survival, as this said earlier, 20 weeks after you cannot abort, then right to burn, वहीं से आता है जन्म लेने का अधिकार. We as a fundamental right is the right guaranteed in the constitution. कि अगर 20 weeks का कंसेप्शन होता है, that child has the right to burn. Then right to minimum standard of food. Somebody was sharing खाना, है ना? You are sharing food, shelter, and clothing. रोटी कपड़ा और मकान. Yes. And right to live with dignity. Right to live with dignity. Sir also shared. What do you mean by right to live with dignity in the context of a child? In the context of a child, right to live with dignity क्या मतलब होता है? What do you think? Yes, why? Yes. ठीक है, हाँ जी. Right, yeah. और कोई? Right to live with dignity. Dignity का what मतलब है? Dignity मतलब है ना? So और कोई? ठीक है. Any child who is born in this on this land, इंडिया में जो भी बच्चा पैदा होता है, उसको डिग्निफाइड लाइफ के लिए सुप्रीम कोर्ट का एक जजमेंट आया था. 19 क्रिश्चियन जजमेंट बोलते हैं उसको. उन्हीं के जजमेंट के बाद ये राइट टू एजुकेशन एक्ट की बात शुरू हो गई थी. जो 2002 में अमेंडमेंट आया था, 2009 में क्या आया था? राइट टू एजुकेशन एक्ट. नहीं. So if a child is not getting proper education, if a child is not getting proper shelter, if a child is not getting proper health care, that means we are failing in providing right to life to a child. we as a nation will fail. आपके पड़ोस में हो रहा है तो आप फेल हो रहे हैं, हमारे पड़ोस में हम फेल हो रहे हैं, because our life without education, without health, without nutritious food is not a dignified life. Yeah. Again, somebody shared that nutrition, protection, medical care is all part of the right to survival, right to development, विकास का अधिकार. हम बच्चे के विकास अधिकार की बात कर रहे हैं अभी, हम देश के विकास अधिकार नहीं बात करते हैं. Different discourse. Here we are talking about right to development of a child from बच्चे perspective से, बाल विकास, बच्चे का विकास का अधिकार. So when I say this child has right to development, what do you think? What should he or she get? Very good education, proper nutrition. Good. सही बात बोल रहे हैं. Yeah. और कुछ? So yeah. So when the right of development, children have the right to all form development, and from childhood, we should consider there are 3 pillars of development of a child. There are many others also covering that. Mainly, we have to take care of 3. 1, emotional development. 2, mental development, and 3, physical development. These all are interlinked. Why emotional development? Why emotional development is required? एक बच्चे के लिए emotional development क्यों जरूरी है?
बच्चा की पैदा होता है, उसका जो स्टेज होता है वो स्टेज होता है, बहुत विदाउट इमोशनल किया जाएगा. बच्चे को हाँ, बच्चे मेंटल मतलब माइंड उतना डेवलप नहीं होता है सर, और उस टाइम हम लोग को इमोशनल सपोर्ट देना होगा.
Right, you're right.
उसका मेंटल डेवलपमेंट अलग तरीके से
सही क्या, अगर बच्चों को डांट दीजिएगा अगले बार सवाल नहीं करेगा, वो सवाल नहीं करेगा तो सोचना बंद कर देगा. जो भी बच्चा सवाल कर रहा है इसका मतलब he or she is thinking person. He is very right. Or so if you see emotional support is very important. If a child, it is a established research that if a child is not getting emotional support in the childhood, he or she may be a different kind of person in the later stage. So for proper, that is why if you see earlier, children in the joint family, children used to be much loved on because the taya, the chacha, grandparents, all were there to support him or her. This emotional support is very important in this nuclear family age, because most of the nuclear family, her husband goes to father and mother both are working and children are at home. So we have to work on this emotional development, how we can fulfill this thing. Mental development through education and learning, that we have discussed about this later, and physical development through recreation, play, and nutrition. These all are very important, and this is important during, if not even at least after the disaster, when we are recovery stage, post disaster scenario. We have to provide emotional support to a child. We have to provide books. We have to provide bat ball. We have to provide football. All those things, because for a child, they don't know what happened. Immediately after the disaster, when we are working on recovery, we should not only focus on food, medicine, all those things. We have to focus on children with what they are want: books, storytelling, game, football, cricket, all those things. Yeah, right to development. We know recently we have there was a Right to Education Act in 2009, and currently we have National Education policy, any. So I will not go in detail, but I'd just like to know what is different between both the act and the policy. Any idea? What is the age group they are covering? And why? Right to Education Act, since we have less time, so I'll just Right to Education Act covers children in the age group of 6 to 14 years, right? So, and National Education Policy, which is NEP, उसको हम लोग नई शिक्षा नीति भी कहते हैं, right? ये इसके एज ग्रुप क्या बात करता है ये? हैं? 6 to 18 years. Or anyone else? 3 to 18 years. Okay. Now the question arises now. Why? Why government decided to increase from 14 to 18 years a hair covered from 3 to 6 years? First, let us discuss about 3 to 6 years. Why the government thought about this? इसके पीछे क्या लॉजिक हो सकता है? आप लोग सोचा आपने? टेक्नोलॉजी एडवांसमेंट, ठीक, और फ्रॉम हेल्थ पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू, फ्रॉम बायोलॉजी पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू, ठीक है, दिस आल्सो अब 3 to 6 सर, 3 to 6 राइट, इनके लिए आप तालीम गा सकते हैं. It's 75 to 80%, depend on the kind of development environment. 75 to 80% माइंड, मस्तिष्क, दिमाग का डेवलपमेंट 6 साल से पहले हो जाता है. The government thought if the mind, if your brain is developed before 6 years and you started working after 6 years, you are missing the major part of the development, isn't it? जब बच्चे का 80%, जैसे किताब है, आपने 80% तो लिख दिया, 20% बचा ना आपके पास, तो you have already, क्या लिखा है उस किताब में 80% you don't know. The child was blank when she was born, but reaching up to 5 years, 6 years, her or his 80% of the book was filled with whatever kind of environment she gets, where he goes or she goes. So government decided, let us start writing when she or he is blank, her mind is blank. That's why he started in new education policy, नई शिक्षा नीति, the government decided to cover from 3 to 18 years. Okay, right? There are many reasons, but main the rest you may discuss and explore. There are Google. Now, why government decided to increase the age from 14 to 18 years?
Over by that period, and after that the child can be
Yeah, you're right. It's 14 years के एज में कौन सा क्लास पास करता है वो? 8. So you have this. Yeah. So yeah, now you can. You are right. Others, why government decided to include 14 to 18 years in new education policy, नई शिक्षा नीति?
सर, ये प्राइमरी एजुकेशन, बेसिक एजुकेशन, उसके बाद हो जा रहा है स्पेशलाइजेशन.
When we are talking from the point of your right, अधिकार, है ना, and right to live with dignity. आप सही कह रहे हैं. हमें कह रहे हैं, अब इस सवाल को दिमाग में रखिए, right? Yeah, you are right. Don't. I'm just saying, when you are saying, we also keep कि कौन से अधिकार का वो उसको मिलेगा. What kind of horizon he or she will be open for? वो कौन सा दुनिया है उसके लिए खुल जाएगा when वो 12वीं पास करेगी इंस्टेड ऑफ 8वीं पास करने। मैंने आप हिंट दे दिया। 12वीं पास करके क्या कर सकते हो आप लोग? कौन सा कोर्स है जो 12वीं से पहले होता है? कैन यू बिकम MBBS, लॉयर, डॉक्टर, इंजीनियर? नो, सबके लिए क्या जरूरत है? 12 एंड हाँ ITI can, but we don't want our children to just go for ITI. We want it's one of the
for technical knowledge.
yes, you're right. When a child is when we were educating, we were saying that the right of these children are being, sidelined. If a child, when you talk right, you're talking about the right from all, not those children who can afford. हम तो पढ़ लिए. When we're talking about the right, we talk all the children in the age of 3 to 18 years in India, irrespective of her region, her religion, her race, her income, her parents' income, है ना, location. कहीं भी पैदा हो, किसी भी जात धर्म का हो, हर बच्चे को 12वीं तक पढ़ने का अधिकार मिलना चाहिए. ये yes.
Just mentioned every child has the right to be educated till the age of 18. But the child labor act is till age of 14.
Yeah.
To the best of my knowledge.
Yeah, you're right. But उसमें जो है वो बच्चे, देखिए वो तो उस पे भी बात हो रही है कि एज को बढ़ाने की बात हो रही है ना. हम लोग जो चाइल्ड राइट्स पे काम करते हैं, हम लोग का मानना है वो जो है 18 साल तक का बच्चा कोई काम ना करे. यू आर राइट, वेरी गुड क्वेश्चन, वेरी गुड. हाँ, लेकिन उस एक्ट की वजह से उस बच्चे का अधिकार पढ़ने का खत्म नहीं होता है. यू गेटिंग मी? वो उसमें ये कहता है एक्ट कि जो बच्चा 14 से ऊपर है वो काम कर सकता है, कर सकती है, बट वो नहीं कहता है कि वो बच्चा पढ़ नहीं सकता है, नहीं सकती.
There is a lot of debate कि child marriage act, child labor act, और जो बाकी जो education वाले जो child की definition, they should harmonize. So that is also a reason of bringing 18 here, and there is a lot of debate in the child labor act also to section for this.
First, so अब हम थोड़ा फास्ट चलेंगे. उधर से मैसेज आ गया है हमको. So we can discuss over the cup of tea if there is any question, right? अब बाद में बात कर सकते हैं. You have my so right to protection, सुरक्षा का अधिकार. when आप सोचते हैं क्या होता है? देखिए हम लोग we are in the urban city, but there are many children in rural area who has to walk a lot. They are flood. They has to walk. You may have seen the photograph in newspaper that in Uttarakhand people are walking. There is a ropeway. They are going. They have to walk through the jungles. So when we talk, what are the perceived risks? We have to ensure that the child is protected. I will share this PPT is there. You can. Again, the same thing. We have to create a safety net where a child is free to walk into the school, come out of the school, and there is no, violence she or he faces on the way to school or in the school. Yeah. And participation का मतलब क्या था? What is the right to participation? When I'm saying right to participation, I'm talking about a child.
बच्चा को पार्टिसिपेट करने का, हर बच्चे को पार्टिसिपेट करने का और कोई से रोक नहीं सकता.
अच्छा, ठीक. और हाँ, yes, decision making, that is very important. participation. उस बच्चे के लिए जो बन रहा है, क्या उसमें उसका सहभागिता है? Is she participating in the decision making process of what is being decided by her parent, her teacher, principal of the school, or director, ma'am, anybody? So that is the participation. कितना मिनट है मेरे पास? उसी आज खत्म हो चुका है. अच्छा ठीक है. So I'll just have a quick about this. That was the main thing. So I will just not go through the. What is the reciprocal relationship? What do you mean by this? यहाँ पे क्या होगा reciprocal relationship in your school? हाँ, हम लोग ऐसा काम करें, we that we should help each other. हमारे काम से जो whatever the benefit to each other, or when we I'll share a few names. I would like to know whether you know these children, because in climate change they have played a very. I'm just giving you a hint. There is one person, Lisi Priyanka Lisi Priya Kanjugam. She is from Northeast area. I will share. I'll just give another name. Haziq Kazi is from Pune. Bilal Dhar. One thing common in all this thing. Bilal Dhar is from Kashmir. One from Northeast. She's Haji is from Pune. Kazi. Bilal Dhar is from Kashmir. And another is Greta Thunberg. You know? अपने देश बच्चों नहीं जानते हम लोग. ये तीनों चारों में एक ही कॉमन है. All are children in the age group of 10 to 15 years age group में, they are creating history for climate change thing. और इसमें से एक बच्चा है जिसको प्राइम मिनिस्टर ने अपने मन की बात में उसका जिक्र किया था, और उस बच्चे का नाम है संभव, तो वो इंडियन बच्चा है. अब जस्ट गेस कीजिए, आपको 3 नाम दिया मैंने, लिसी प्रिया, हाजिक और बिलाल धार. प्राइम मिनिस्टर ने अपने मन की बात में क्लाइमेट चेंज की बात कर रहे थे, उन्होंने इनमें से एक बच्चे की बात किया था, और उसके बेसिस पर उस बच्चे को उस स्टेट का एम्बेसडर बनाया गया था क्लाइमेट चेंज का, और उसका नाम है बिलाल धार. बिलाल. और क्यों बनाया गया था? कश्मीर में एक बुल्लुल लेक है, बुल्लुल लेक, जो एशिया का सबसे लार्जेस्ट फ्रेश वाटर लेक है. और उसमें जब हम जैसे लोग टूरिस्ट जाते हैं तो खा करके नैपकिन जो है, चिप्स खाते हैं, नैपकिन जो है फेंक देते हैं वहीं पे. दैट वो बच्चे के अभी 15 साल का है. बिलाल धार की उम्र अभी 15 साल का है, 15-16, अब थोड़ा बड़ा गया हो गया. And that he started collecting those, जो भी ट्रेशेस था उसके अंदर, water bottle, all those things. He started, and he cleaned lots. And then when some news reporter visited there, and he recognized, oh, this guy is cleaning the lake. Then that was reported. Case story bani, and then somehow that story reached to our prime minister, and he mentioned him, and then he became the ambassador of Kashmir Valley Municipal Corporation. So children are working in India, in abroad, for climate change, which is part of it. जो कारण बन रहा है disaster का, one of the main कारण. So we should also be ready to work, contribute, so that we can help, mitigate those causes of the climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chani. Thanks a lot. Students are really interactive in your session, and because of the lot of questions that you put towards the children. So students are quite interactive. So coming on to the end of the session, this is the last session that I am going to call for. The session is titled Disasters and Opportunity for the Opportunist. This is to be presented by Ms. Ipshita Shi. She is the registered nurse at Stoke Mandeville Hospitals, which treats generally the spinal cord injured patients, maybe war victim, maybe some sports victim, or maybe disaster victims. Stoke Mandeville Hospital, United Kingdom, is the best rehabilitation hospital dedicated for the management of spinal cord injuries, especially high tetras. High tetra injuries are to be treated best at Stoke Mandeville Hospital. She is a registered nurse there. She has more than 10 years of work experience, and she is a master's in nursing, pediatrics is her specialty. She could not attend the session live, so she has given a recorded presentation for us. So we'll just run that presentation, the recorded one, and for the benefit of the workshop. Can we start that?
Topic when the natural disasters strike, they often cause the personal and the financial difficulty for both individuals and communities and can result in loss of life, as we all know. But that is not only the effect which the disaster can occur, but the immediate effect on that of a natural disaster materialize through other three channels, like disruptions of physical capital, such as the housing, commercial building, vehicles, infrastructure such as roads, and population displacement, and disruptions of economic activities. So in emergencies and humanitarian crisis, some unnoticed and unavoidable issues are potential to rise up, such as human trafficking, gender-based violence, abuse, including children and women, and so on and so forth. The lists are very long. So these are some of the long-term effects on population in post-disaster phase, where the opportunists utilize scope to target the vulnerable group of population. So in the next slides, we will see why. So why in the post-disaster phase these are rising up? Disaster actually act as a catalyst for the opportunist. Natural disasters are unique and will affect region or the countries differently according to the infrastructure and the capabilities. A disaster may necessitate displacement, and any subsequent destabilization can increase in the individual's risk, obviously. If a natural disaster does not necessitate displacement, damages to the region can increase in the likelihood. For example, in 2007 and 2009, cyclones in Bangladesh damaged millions of homes, acres of croplands, and thousands of kilometers of roads and embankments. People may be more vulnerable because they are displaced from their home and temporarily staying in a shelter. Then they are separated from their families and friends, disconnected from supportive services, unable to safely arm. They are economically unstable at that moment. So these are very important issues. Other than that, we can also identify some other issues like people won't speak the local languages, and that is make them more vulnerable because they can't communicate with the local authorities. They are afraid of physical harm and stigma and have no access to assistance, services, or protection provided by the local laws. So, we start with human trafficking. Why? What is human trafficking? Let's discuss that one and how this is increased during the post-disaster phase. Human trafficking is a very, very serious public health concern, both domestically and worldwide. Perpetrators of human trafficking manipulate and exploit others' vulnerabilities for profit. Human trafficking is a crime that occurs when the trafficker compels a victim by force, fraud, or coercion to perform labor, services, or commercial sex. And It is the world's second largest criminal industry, generating an estimated $150 billion annually. So during environmental or public health disaster, traffickers can control victims through their need for basic resources such as food, water, shelter, and other control methods can be physically assaulting or threatening serious harm, psychologically manipulating or shaming, providing false promises about work or living conditions, pretending to have an intimate relationship, pretending to provide protection, withholding wages or debt bondage, isolating the victims. So these are various ways how the traffickers catch up the vulnerable group from the population in post-disaster phase and put them down and make them channelized towards the human trafficking. If we are talking about human trafficking, the most vulnerable groups are the two. One are children, one is a woman. So if we talk about child trafficking, children orphaned or separated from their parents, women who have lost their homes and livelihoods, and migrants flooding into the disaster-stricken area to work are particularly at risk for trafficking post-disaster. Illegal adoption can also occur post-disaster as traffickers take advantage of displaced children, selling them to remote families who believe they are helping a child in need. It was prevalent after the 2010 earthquake in Haiti, when an unknown number of children were taken illegally from the country for international adoption. So this is really very bad. And women trafficking, that is another weaker part of the society. Women also face an elevated trafficking risk post-disaster, especially for sex trafficking. Post-disaster, women may lose their jobs and homes, leading to poverty and financial debt that also channelize them towards the trafficking. For example, after Hurricane Harvey, the prevalence of adult advertisement online doubled, with many offering rent-free accommodations to any pretty girls wanting to make some quick money and recover losses happened from Harvey. That is happening in US. So you can just identify how the people are channelized towards the trafficking during disaster phase. In August 2005, Hurricane Katrina made landfall in Louisiana, impacting the Pelican State with winds up to 174 miles per hour. Many individuals displaced from the storm become victims of human trafficking. In the 5 years following Katrina, over 3,750 survivors of human trafficking were identified in the Gulf Coast region alone. These are only identified people. There may be a lots of can be there in the country. Next, we can talk about gender-based violence. So, gender-based violence is actually an umbrella term for any harmful act that is perpetrated against a person's will and that is based on socially ascribed or gender differences between male and female. And gender-based violence increases in disaster across the world. Suggested risk factors includes increased life ratios, failure of law enforcement, exposure to high-risk environment, exacerbations of existing gender inequalities, and unequal social norms. So, 2 points are very important. One is exposure to high-risk environment during disaster. This happened. Another one is already or pre-existing gender inequalities that is made more vulnerable of happening gender-based violence afterwards. And these are causing different kinds of gender-based violence. So gender-based violence can be rape, physical assault, sexual assault, psychological or emotional abuse, forced marriage, denial of resources, services or opportunities, sexual exploitations and abuse called as SIA as a short form. So these are all different kinds of gender-based violence happen anytime with anyone. So if we talk about gender-based violence in Latin America, data reveals that on the southern frontiers of Mexico, 70% of migrant women are victims of violence and 60% suffer from some kind of sexual abuse during their journey. Brazil and Colombia are the main transit points for trafficking in Latin America, and the Dominican Republic is listed among the 4 countries of the world with the highest proportions of women trafficked for sexual exploitations. In the aftermath of the Haiti earthquake in 2010, unsafe living conditions, lack of private bathing facilities, lack of lighting, and lack of police presence have been indicated among the contributing factors of sexual violence against women and girls in the camp, including sexual exploitation and abuse by humanitarian workers. So you can just identify humanitarian workers, they are not even safe, so we have to be more cautious when we are talking about them. And what can be the consequences of gender-based violence? So reporting and law enforcement mechanism as well as services for survivors of gender-based violence are often disrupted by disaster. Actually, the law enforcement, every services to safeguard the population are already weakened. So it is very difficult to raise the incident and work upon it. This also hamper the collections of data. So prevalence of the gender-based violence, how it is, what is the actual data or the number of cases that cannot be identified. Several of the country studies noted that police records are missing or maybe very poor. Most of the country's disaster plans do not include the arrangements and preventing or addressing the GBV. This reflects and may contribute to low awareness of gender-based violence in disaster. People are not aware about it, so they are not involved this part in the policies or planning phase of disaster management. With respect to the health emergencies, academic research indicates that GBV increases the incidence of HIV/AIDS. Afterwards, anecdotal reports from practitioners and government indicate that gender-based violence increased during the Ebola crisis even. So these are the general consequences of gender-based violence. Another point is very important, and that is for the most vulnerable group of the society, that is the children. Children are the most vulnerable in disaster. Typically, in developing countries, children hold a high percentage of the population. Because of the consequences of climate change, number of natural disasters is rising, and every year around 400 disasters occurs globally, affecting the most vulnerable groups. Among them are the children. For example, in Haiti, around 40% of the total populations are under 18 years of age. Physiologically and psychologically, children have less chance to cope and survive in acute and chronic traumatic incidents. Children are actually dependent on their parents or carer to get access for their food, shelter, clothing, medical care, security, and so on. So they are very, very vulnerable group of the society. In addition, they suffer more from physical injuries too. So disaster lead to the disruptions of social structures, and the social structures normally used to protect the children, and during disaster these are disrupted, so that increase the exposure and likelihood of the violence, particularly against the children. So that is causing them abuse. If we talk about different scenarios of child abuse, we can see significant increase in violence were observed before and after Katrina's storm. The result shows that as compared to before the storm, more absence from schools were reported. That is quite obvious. And research shows in 2007 in Bangladesh, after flood, the most families affected by the flood of 90% find it difficult to find food and shelter, and thus become more violent for their children at home. As they cannot fulfill their own need, they cannot give feed to the children, so they are making them more abusive. They are become more abusive towards their children, maybe physically or sometimes emotionally. A large population of the children were subject to violence of their parents during the floods, 70% by mother, 40% by the father. The research says that. The level of violence was related to the socio-economic level, and the lower the status of the family, the more violence was applied. And it is also seen that mothers are more emotionally abusing the children, whereas the fathers are doing more the physical abuse. So these are the different aspects of children abuse has been seen because of the disruptions of the normal social norms. That is the reason it happened. And some of the sexual abuse are also related as a part of the child abuse. These are all comes under gender-based violence. So these are different issues that are rising up post-disaster phase. But now the thing is, what action can be taken to face the gender-based violence or the trafficking or abuse in emergency context? Due to the complex environment that accompanies emergency situations, the issues of human trafficking, gender-based violence, or abuse are not often incorporated as a variable of immediate or necessary attention by government or non-governmental organizations. So it's very important that we give more attention towards that factors. And however, it is essential to protect the rights and dignity of all persons affected by the disaster, including migrants, before, during, and after an emergency. Some fight against trafficking in person in emergency situation must be understood as a measure of immediate assistance to save lives. Trafficking must be considered as much of a priority as any other response to an emergency situation aimed at guaranteeing to comprehensive protection of vulnerable people, whether national or migrant. That is why anti-trafficking activities deserve a place in the comprehensive protection approach that is applied in emergency situation. So these are very big terms we are discussing about. Let's see some key points or actions which could be taken for making more awareness of these issues post-disaster phase, like education and awareness campaign, disseminate tools to detect possible human trafficking cases and know to whom to refer. This is very important that people should be aware about where to report, what to do if these things are happen. Then execute preventive and non-reactive actions. Then good coordination among governmental, non-governmental organizations, the camps, the shelter. So these people must provide a good support services to the vulnerable group, and their immediate basic needs must be fulfilled, like getting access of the food, water, proper lighting, sanitary services for the women and the girls. So these all basic needs, if these are fulfilled, obviously the rate or the chances of, but the focus needed in certain aspects like sexual and gender-based violence is a topic for further studies. When I got this topic to discuss about, I didn't find so many different research studies on these topics, because these are all very different kinds of topics where the incidents are not reported at all. The data these which we are getting that are also misleading us, because the numbers are not actual, and the research studies which already has been done, these are also very few to make some generalized conclusion or help in developing some planning or policies in preparedness of disaster. So despite the importance of the recent humanitarian crisis in Syria, Iraq and Yemen, this disaster have not been adequately studied by researchers. With regard to the violence against children, we can see that these are the common example we can find, like these are very recent issues already happened. There also the research has not been done for the violence against children. Similarly, the earthquake in Pakistan, the Iran with substantial damages have not been studied in reviewed articles. So the research articles are mostly for the physical damage, the loss of life, the immediate effect on the population. These all issues has been discussed, but not the issues like human trafficking or all, where the opportunities or the people who are making this kind of crime is not been identified or enlightened, so that we will get the exact data and make some preparedness, the planning about the same. Basically, gender-based violence, human trafficking, child abuse in emergencies caused by natural disaster is largely neglected area of concern both globally and regionally, lacking attention by both disaster management and international gender-based violence players. Not only do few studies exist on the possible linkage between these issues and disaster situations, but also very few programs have been implemented to address these issues in disaster response and recovery. The main gaps are in the area of disaster preparedness, with essentially no mention of GBV related issues in either contingency planning or in early warning. On the other side, disaster recovery appears more mindful of the need to address and mitigate gender-based violence trafficking among the affected population. So actually, the need is to implement the policies and procedures in the preparedness planning of the disaster and identifying these issues, and then we can aware the people more about the same so that the vulnerability of the population would be reduced afterwards, and this kind of issues cannot be risen up too much. That way maybe these issues can be going down a little bit. For all these things we need more research, more data, so that we can get the actual number how these are affected. We can get actual scenario, maybe domestically or the globally. That way we can be more enlightened with some of the studies and which help us for some future planning and preparing for the disaster management. So that is my topic as the disaster opportunity for the opportunists. I hope you get little idea about all these things which we have discussed today. These are a few sites where from I got some idea and some relevant data to discuss all these things in my presentation. As today I am not present, so if anyone have any queries or any, please you can contact me in that mail ID, that is ipshita.she@yahoo.com. I hope you got some idea about the topic. Thank you very much.
Please give the concluding remarks based on the 4 sessions that we had for today's workshop. Sir.
Good evening to all, and enthusiasm with which you are clapping. I wonder whether this was for speaking or concluding. So the message from students is very loud and clear, but it is a unceremonious responsibility given to me to put all such intense sessions in a nutshell. I'll start with Dr. Santosh Kumar, who very beautifully portrayed the role of young volunteers in a humanitarian crisis, and how from Buddha's story and anecdote he derived that bringing a smile on the faces of people should be the motive. He also brought Mullah Nasruddin's story by telling that it is a giving which is more important. So I think I salute your pedagogy, that how you bring the storytelling in between to make it more interesting and beat the challenges of post-lunch session by your interesting, and also how the readiness of systems and individual, as well as his quote on agreeing to disagree. So that is a basic premise of any democratic society, and we must invite that. Professor Abbas Ostad Taghizada, he narrated how the dimensions of disaster DRR framework pre-COVID were more dominated by fatalism, engineering, and social approaches, while post-disaster has brought the health dimension also into the discourse, and that the social determinants of disaster and social impact of disaster are the important elements of this framework. And he portrayed that poverty, health, social capital, social security, employment, and social well-being are important social determinants, and social justice is an important social determinant, is often missing from the discourse and debate on DRR. And also he dwelled upon the definition of social justice and various dimensions of social justice, from the rights perspective, from the resource distributions, and from the consequences in all phases of DRM, how it is important. Dr. Shaheen Ansari had very nicely made us learn many things through very participatory and interesting pedagogy, that about the child rights, about how the Child Right Convention, India was leading in ratifying that, and the country he made us all get surprised about the one country which did not, sign it. So how the prejudice and biases work in our mind is also reflected. Even I was thinking it may be Pakistan, Afghanistan, something, and none of us had guessed that it could be US. So sometimes our mind also gets prejudiced. Similarly, he has also spoken about the child rights, important child rights of survival, protection, development, and participation. I hope I'm not missing any one of them. And Education Act of 2009 and as well as National Education Policy of 2020, how the age criteria are differing and what are the logic and rationale behind this change in this thing. And he has dwelled beyond that how the child human rights are very important. And I think we had a very interesting session, recorded session from Ipsita on the disaster as an opportunity for opportunists, and she mainly dwelled upon the three broad elements. One was the human trafficking dimension. She gave a very elaborate context to it. Second was the gender-based violence. And she gave examples from the Latin America, from Mexico, from Colombia, from Brazil and Haiti earthquake. Similarly, law enforcement, data collection, police records and disaster management plans, they are lacking into the gender dimension and how it can be integrated into that. She also spoke about child abuse, vulnerability, physical and psychological vulnerability of children due to the lack of capability to cope up and dependency on parents, and how the not only violence outside the house but inside the house also. And one very interesting fact for all male to be happy about is that at least fathers are less violent with their children. But I think we have to also go more deeper. Maybe fathers are less at home to cause that violence. So this may not be intrinsically that they are very non-violent. So I think we require more research and data to see that why this difference is. Thank you very much for this.
Thanks a lot, sir, for summarizing the entire session into the key points that we also noted, and you summarized it so well for us. I would like to extend the vote of thanks, the last part of the session. I would like to thank the Executive Director, sir, Shri Rajaratnu, for taking time out for us, accepting our invitation, chairing the session, and giving us his thoughtful and rich inputs on the subject. Thanks a lot, sir. To Director IIHMR, Delhi, Dr. Sutapa, for raising the occasion and being a motivating leader for all of us. Dr. Santosh, sir, my mentor, senior advisor in IDM, for taking time out and being the subject matter expert and showing us the way from forward to ethical management, even in the crisis situation. Dr. Shaheen Ansari, the child rights specialist, for his expert opinions and advice, and how vividly and in a rich manner, in a simple manner, he explained child rights to all of us, intricacies related to child rights specifically. To the online speakers, Dr. Abbas, for sharing the Iran experience, which we never knew until we read his story. And Ms. Ipshita Shi, for her participation and sharing the valuable inputs from across the America and Latin America side and the UK, US side, the valuable experiences that she brings to us from being a spinal cord injured nursing, pediatric nursing expert. To the faculty members, support staff, and especially the students who are listening to it very patiently, participating to it, and waiting to interact with sir. If I can just cut down your questions from 5 to 2. Only 2 main questions. You can decide which you want to ask right here before we proceed for tea. Anybody wants to ask something from sir? His experience, his learning.
But I didn't want to violate your human rights.
So he has been really.
There's something called habeas corpus, that is keeping the people captivated forcibly. So that is again a human right. So maybe that this session can be over tea or it can be voluntary.
Right, and And in case if sir agrees, I understand that he is accepting our second invitation to be with us and discuss with our students with no faculty around, specifically about disaster management and his rich experience, so that we learn as public health managers how disaster management can be intertwined into public health so well that you talk in the same language as the administrators understand and as the recipient of the care understand. So thank you so much for this opportunity, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, faculty members. Thank you, students. Thank you, experts. In the basement also. And we have other classes also going on. So no, we have the opportunity to call sir again. Sir, just kind of so we can host him another time. And we can have students exclusively interacting with sir. Right? So either ways, we can do that. Yeah, we can have a group photo with sir now.